3 years ago, I was eating leftover pizza in my car outside a public library, trying to figure out how to tell my parents I had just drained the last $3,000 of my savings into a business idea I hadn't fully thought through. I was 28, recently unemployed, by choice, because I thought I was meant for more, and utterly convinced that I was one viral moment away from making it big. Let me backtrack. I had been working in marketing for a mid-sized agency for 5 years. Good pay, great benefits, and a boss who was decent enough. But every morning, I woke up feeling like I was on autopilot. I wanted to build something of my own. I had this vague, half-baked idea about helping local businesses manage their social media without needing to hire a full-time person or expensive agency. Kind of like Hootsuite meets Canva, with a local business twist. I called it Buzztown. It was a terrible name. Anyway, I quit my job, took my savings, and hired 2 freelance developers I found on Upwork to build an MVP. I had no tech background and no clue how to scope software. The devs were in Eastern Europe, and we communicated over Slack and voice notes. I quickly learned that I had no idea what I was doing. The MVP took twice as long and cost twice as much as I expected. By the time the app was somewhat functional, I was already $18,000 deep, $15K of my own money, and a $3K loan from a friend I still feel guilty about. I was surviving on canned beans, energy drinks, and gig work while cold emailing every mom-and-pop shop in my area to try Buzztown. The app was janky. Buttons didn't work, the UI looked like it was built in 2007, and features broke without explanation. Out of 160 businesses I contacted, 5 agreed to try it. 2 of them used it for more than a week. 1 paid me $15. I should have quit there, but I didn't. Out of desperation, I joined every local networking group I could find. I sat through Chamber of Commerce breakfasts and small business seminars, handing out flyers like it was 1999. At one meeting, I met a guy named Kevin who ran a local print shop. He didn't understand SaaS, but he liked me, and more importantly, he had a cousin who ran a digital agency. That cousin, Marissa, agreed to meet for coffee. Marissa didn't sugarcoat it. She said my product sucked, her words, but she liked the concept. She offered me a deal. If I could rebuild it into a usable platform, she'd test it with a few of her clients. I begged her to give me 3 months. At that point, I was broke and sleeping on a friend's futon. I decided to take one last swing. I maxed out a credit card and joined a local coding boot camp, not to become an engineer, but to understand enough to rebuild the product with someone who knew what they were doing. Through the boot camp, I met Jason, a quiet but brilliant developer who had just left a fintech job and was building small products for extra cash. We clicked. He agreed to help me rebuild Buzztown for a small equity stake and a deferred payment if we ever made money. 6 months later, Buzztown V2 launched. It was cleaner, simpler, and focused entirely on automating posts for small businesses using pre-written content and templates. We dropped the Canva-like design stuff and leaned into automation. Marissa onboarded 3 of her clients. 2 loved it. Word of mouth started working. Jason and I set up a referral program, and by the end of year 1, we had 84 paying customers at $29/month. We weren't making real money, but we weren't bleeding out either. Then came the moment that changed everything. A well-known small business TikToker with 500,000 followers somehow came across Buzztown and mentioned it in a video about time-saving tools. It wasn't even a sponsored post, she just liked the product. Overnight, we got 2,000 signups. The platform crashed. Jason pulled a 48-hour sprint to get things stable. Out of those 2,000 signups, 340 converted to paying users within the first month. That gave us our first real cash buffer. We hired a part-time support person and invested in redesigning the onboarding process. Growth became less painful. 6 months later, we hit 1,200 paying users. At that point, Jason quit his contract work and joined full-time. I started drawing a small salary again, $2,000/month, but it felt like I was rich. In year 2, we rebranded from Buzztown to Postpilot, which tested better with customers. We added AI-driven post suggestions, integrated with Instagram and Facebook, and launched a new mobile app. By the end of the year, we had 3,700 paying customers and had crossed $1 million in annual recurring revenue. VCs started reaching out. We weren't even looking for money. We raised a small $1.5 million seed round from a firm that believed in bootstrapped first growth. Jason and I stayed majority owners. We used the money to expand the team to 6 people, add customer support, and finally fix some of the duct-taped backend systems. Now we're in year 3. Postpilot has 11,000 plus paying customers, and we just crossed $3.8 million ARR. We've helped thousands of local businesses post consistently and build online presence without having to become digital marketers themselves. Our churn rate is under 3%. We're profitable. And Jason and I finally took a real vacation to Mexico, where we didn't open our laptops for 5 whole days. Looking back, it's wild how close I came to quitting at so many points. The ramen-fueled nights, the awkward networking events, the sleepless nights wondering if I was a delusional idiot, all of it was real. But so was the progress, even when it didn't feel like it. If you're in the trenches right now, especially in the early days, just know that survival is underrated. Sometimes it's not about being brilliant. It's about refusing to stay down when your dumb MVP crashes and burns. It's about emailing 160 people and getting 158 no's and showing up anyway. It's about sleeping on futons and betting on yourself one more time. You don't have to go viral. You just have to stay alive long enough to get lucky. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. Title: I built $1 million business out of a hobby no one took seriously. I used to be the kind of person who couldn't sit still. Even when I had a decent 9 to 5 job, I was always chasing new projects on the side, some coding, some consulting, even a failed attempt to flip sneakers. But none of them took off. None of them even came close. My breakthrough came from the dumbest hobby I had, making soap. Yeah, actual soap. Bars of it. Melts in your hand, smells like lavender or citrus or whatever. It started as a weekend thing to impress my girlfriend at the time. Spoiler, we broke up anyway. I bought one of those DIY kits off Etsy, made a few awful batches that looked like Play-Doh and smelled like sadness, and eventually got decent at it. But I liked it. There was something meditative about the process, choosing oils, pouring layers, swirling in colors. I started experimenting more. Activated charcoal, Himalayan salt, goat's milk. My kitchen looked like a witch's pantry. Then, one weekend, I made this absurd neon green soap that smelled like key lime pie and looked radioactive. I posted it on Instagram with the caption, "Radioactive Clean," and to my surprise, a bunch of people commented on it. Like, way more than usual. A friend messaged me, "I'd buy that." I laughed it off. But later that night, I thought, would he really? So I set up a free Wix website and put 3 of my best-looking soaps on it. I called the brand Dirty Lizard Soap Company, half as a joke, slapped together a logo in Canva, and sent the link to a few friends. I priced the bars at $8 each and made 12 in total. They sold out in 2 days. I was blown away, but I assumed it was just pity purchases from friends. So I made 24 more, added 2 new flavors, and posted about them in a few Reddit threads and hobbyist Facebook groups under the guise of, "Hey, look what I made." Those sold out in a week. That's when I decided to stop treating it like a joke. I knew I needed a better website, so I learned Shopify in a weekend. I also started paying more attention to packaging. Until then, I'd just been wrapping the bars in parchment paper with a rubber stamp. It was cute, but not scalable. I upgraded to printed craft boxes with a cheeky slogan, "Get filthy, get clean." I designed each scent around weird themes. One smelled like bourbon and oak and was called Drunk Uncle. Another was black with gold shimmer, called Sin Soap. I also realized that what made Dirty Lizard stand out wasn't the soap itself. It was the attitude. The brand didn't take itself too seriously. It was fun, grungy, weird. It had a personality. At this point, my savings were running low because I was still working part-time and reinvesting everything into inventory. I spent $3,000 on a decent batch of supplies, rented a small corner in a local commercial kitchen, and started selling at farmers markets. That's when things really took off. There's something about letting people smell your product in person. It converts better than any online ad. I had a tiny booth with a banner that read, "Smell better than you deserve," and people loved it. I started doing $800 weekends, then $1 $200. Then $2,000. I launched a newsletter, ran giveaways on Instagram, partnered with a couple of local influencers, read women with 5K followers and really cute dogs, and got better at content marketing. By month 8, I was making $6K/month in profit. I quit my job. I still remember the panic in my chest when I told my boss. I'd never quit anything that's stable in my life. But I knew, deep down, I had something. And then, funny enough, it got worse before it got better. My first holiday season crushed me. I got 10x the orders I was prepared for and had a full-blown meltdown. My kitchen was stacked floor to ceiling with boxes. I slept 3 hours a night for 2 weeks straight and still had to refund 40 customers. I thought I'd ruined everything. But something strange happened. Most people were cool about it. They told me they loved the product and to take my time. Some even reordered just to support me. That's when I realized the brand had fans, not just customers. I got serious. Leased a 700-square-foot space. Hired my first employee, my college roommate, who'd been laid off. Started wholesaling to gift shops. A boutique hotel reached out and asked for custom bars for their rooms. Then a brewery asked for beer soap. I learned about contract manufacturing, scaled up operations, and paid a designer to redo my branding, still grungy, but professional. We hit our first $100K month about 18 months after launch. The business now does around $1.3 million/year in revenue. About 40% is DTC through our website, 35% is wholesale, and the rest comes from one-off partnerships and seasonal pop-ups. I've got a team of 6. We ship all over the US, and last month we launched a test run in Canada. It's wild to think this all started from a gag gift and some lumpy bars of soap. What worked for me wasn't some grand plan. It was momentum. I chased what people responded to, doubled down, and listened hard. The biggest shift happened when I stopped trying to be a faceless brand and leaned into being weird. That weirdness built community. And here's the thing I tell every wannabe entrepreneur I meet. The stupidest idea can work if you make people feel something. Make them laugh. Make them curious. Give them something to tell their friends. Dirty Lizard Soap Company wasn't really about soap. It was about letting people be gross and fabulous at the same time. And weirdly, that's all a brand really is. If you're sitting on an idea that feels too silly to work, good. That means no one else is doing it yet. I never thought my deepest low would turn into the best thing that ever happened to me. This is the story of how I accidentally built a $1.2 million/your business in 18 months by solving a problem I created myself. 2 years ago, I was a mid-level project manager at a mid-sized logistics firm. Solid paycheck, remote flexibility, some autonomy, but absolutely no passion. I spent most of my day in spreadsheets and endless Zoom calls, and when I wasn't working, I was doom-scrolling Reddit or watching YouTube like I was training for a competition. I didn't hate my job, but I didn't love it either. I was comfortably stuck. Things changed fast when a round of strategic restructuring layoffs hit our department. I was one of the 18% let go, and the severance was exactly enough to cover my expenses for about 4 months if I lived modestly. I didn't panic, not at first. I figured I'd dust off my resume and find something else in a couple of months. I underestimated how brutal the job market was. After 60 days, 97 job applications, and 7 interviews that went nowhere, my severance was almost gone. I was 2 weeks from overdrafting my account and had just started picking up DoorDash gigs when the idea hit me, not like a light bulb moment, more like a slow-burning realization. See, one thing I was doing during those 2 months was applying to jobs with a vengeance. But I kept getting ghosted. My resume was good, but something was off. So I started digging into resume optimization tools, trying AI generators, even hiring a freelance coach to audit my documents. Long story short, I ended up making a Notion dashboard that combined templates, examples, automated AI writing prompts, and a tracking sheet that helped me systematize everything, tailoring resumes, writing cover letters, even preparing for interviews. Once I had it built, I started getting responses again. Not tons, but more than before. And then, the weird part, a friend I vented to asked if he could use my system. So I shared it. 2 days later, he texted me, "Dude, this dashboard is sick. You should charge for this." At first, I laughed it off. But that night, I couldn't sleep. What if? I spent the next 2 days refining the Notion template, cleaning it up, adding some Loom videos, and uploading a few AI prompts I'd been using with ChatGPT to generate custom bullet points. I listed it on Gumroad for $9 with zero expectations. I didn't even bother setting up a proper landing page, just a short Twitter thread and a Reddit post in r/get employed. It made $81 the first day. 7 people bought it. I thought it was a fluke. Then someone shared it on LinkedIn. Then a small job coaching newsletter picked it up. Within 2 weeks, it had made over $2,000. Not exactly life-changing money, but it was the first time anyone had paid me directly for something I built. That was the crack in the wall. I decided to go all in. I paused job hunting and spent every waking hour figuring out how to build this into a real business. I rebranded the dashboard as CareerOS, raised the price to $19, added a premium tier with resume reviews for $79, and hired a friend, a laid-off recruiter, to help handle client feedback. In month 2, we made $11 for 100. Month 3 $22,000. I hit $100K in revenue in under 5 months. People weren't just buying the dashboard, they were raving about it. My DMs were full of people telling me they finally landed interviews, got callbacks, or just felt more confident using it. So I leaned into community. I started a private Slack group for users, hosted live Q/Andas, and even added weekly group resume critiques. Engagement exploded. But the real growth came when I cold pitched a few influencers in the career and tech niches. I didn't have money to pay them, so I offered 50% affiliate commissions. One of them, a well-known ex-Googler with 200K followers, took a chance on me. His tweet thread about CareerOS went viral. That month, we hit $68,000 in sales. My Stripe account looked like a mistake. By month 9, I had hired 2 full-time people, a copywriter and a dev to help with automation. We moved off Gumroad and onto a custom site, added subscription features like interview prep modules and job board aggregators, and built a mobile-friendly interface that integrated with LinkedIn and Indeed job scraping. Today, CareerOS does around $100K/month, mostly from subscriptions at $12/MO and premium upgrades. We have 14,000 plus paid users. 63% of them are actively job-seeking. The rest use it to prepare for future opportunities or transitions. And me? I finally feel like I'm building something that matters. I think the biggest takeaway from this whole journey is that the best business ideas don't usually come from hackathons or Shark Tank pitches. They come from pain, real, frustrating, soul-sucking pain that forces you to invent a solution. If you're stuck, jobless, or burned out, try solving your own problem first. Also, don't underestimate Notion. Seriously. Was I lucky? Absolutely. But I also worked like hell. I didn't know how to code when I started. I didn't have a personal brand or audience. I just had a problem, a prototype, and the fire of unemployment breathing down my neck. If you're reading this and sitting on an idea, especially one that solved your problem, ship it. Even if it's ugly. Even if you're embarrassed. You never know who needs what you already built. And sometimes, the best job is the one you give yourself. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I actually hated the whole rise and grind culture. I thought the hustle mindset was toxic and that people who constantly posted about being your own boss were overcompensating for something. I just wanted a stable job, a good salary, and a quiet life. But life, as they say, had other plans. It started in the least dramatic way possible, a sandwich. Well, technically a failed attempt at buying one. In 2020, during peak pandemic lockdowns, I was working remotely in a mid-level marketing role for a financial tech company. I was living in a small apartment in downtown Chicago, and my daily routine became a predictable cycle of Zoom calls, Slack messages, and the occasional walk to keep myself sane. One day, after back-to-back meetings, I realized I hadn't eaten anything since breakfast. I went to order from my favorite local deli, but their app was down. So I called. No answer. I checked online. They'd shut down permanently. The deli wasn't the only one. Over the next 2 months, I watched half the restaurants in my neighborhood either shut their doors or disappear from apps altogether. Some were posting on Instagram saying the delivery fees were killing them. Others just ghosted. As someone who worked in marketing and analytics, I was curious, what exactly was going on? So I started calling restaurant owners. Just cold calling. I framed it as market research and a possible case study. To my surprise, people were willing to talk. Turns out, most local spots were being absolutely gouged by third-party delivery services. Fees of 30% or more, customer data being withheld, and zero control over the ordering experience. A few had tried launching their own apps, but the cost of development and maintenance was too much, especially with sales so unpredictable. Here's where things got interesting. One of the owners, Marco, who ran a small taco place I loved, said something that stuck with me. I don't need another app. I need a way to get orders without giving away half my margin. That night, I sketched out an idea. What if there was a platform, not an app, but a plug-and-play system that let restaurants accept online orders directly through their existing websites and social pages, with flat fees and full data ownership? I knew just enough about no-code platforms and API integration to be dangerous. I spent the next few weekends building a prototype using Glide, Zapier, Stripe, and a custom front-end hosted on Webflow. Then I pitched it to Marco. He was skeptical, but also desperate. I offered to build it for him for free for 1 month. If it helped, we'd talk about pricing later. He agreed. By the end of that first month, Marco was getting 35% of his online orders directly through our setup. He wasn't paying DoorDash a cent on those orders. I charged him $50 flat for the month after that. He said yes without blinking. That was the moment I realized I might have something real. I started reaching out to more restaurant owners. I had 3 clients within a month. All small shops, all struggling, but all willing to try anything that didn't involve massive fees. I called the platform MenuMate. The problem was, I was still working full-time, and managing the builds, customer support, and product tweaks during evenings and weekends was starting to burn me out. In January 2021, I took a leap. I quit my job and went all in on MenuMate. Worst timing ever. Omicron hit. Several of my early clients shut down for good. My runway, about $18,000 in savings, started drying up fast. I panicked. I questioned everything. I applied for part-time gigs just to stay afloat. But I also pivoted. If small shops were too unstable, what about restaurant groups? I began cold emailing regional restaurant operators, groups that owned 5 or more locations. I created a slick pitch deck, demo videos, and a pricing model that scaled by location. That's when I met Rachel, COO of a regional barbecue chain with 12 locations. She was sharp, old school, but open-minded. I pitched her the whole idea, showed her the numbers from Marco's taco place, and walked her through a demo. 3 weeks later, she signed a 6-month pilot deal worth $7,800. That money gave me breathing room. More importantly, it gave me legitimacy. With a real client on board, I went to a local small business accelerator and got accepted. They gave me a $15,000 seed grant and free office space. I hired my first developer, just part-time at first. We rebuilt MenuMate with better UX and scalable infrastructure. I also added an upsell feature, SMS marketing directly through the platform. Open rates were over 90%, and that became a massive value add. Fast forward to mid-2022. MenuMate was generating $8,000 MRR with a churn rate under 5%. I wasn't rich, but I was sustainable. And I'd built something from scratch that was helping real people. Then came the acquisition offer. A competitor, larger, venture-backed, VC-hungry, reached out. They wanted my client base and tech stack. The offer was $450,000, all cash. I thought about it for weeks. On one hand, this was life-changing money. On the other hand, it felt like giving away my kid after teaching it how to walk. In the end, I said no. Instead, I raised a small round from angel investors, just $120K to scale. We expanded into 3 new metro areas. By the end of 2023, MenuMate had over 130 restaurant clients. Now it's 2025. I've got a team of 6. We're cash flow positive. We've started offering AI-based menu optimization tools, which have increased average order value by 14% across the board. We also just signed our first national franchise group. Looking back, the most surprising part isn't that it worked, it's that I changed. I don't hate the entrepreneur label anymore. I don't even mind the grind. Because for the first time, I'm building something that matters. And to think, it all started with a failed sandwich order. So I never thought I'd be the guy to start a business that took off. I was 32, deep in credit card debt, and working a soul-draining job in corporate IT support. You know the type, locked in a cubicle, resetting passwords for people who should have retired in 2003 and still think the cloud is just the weather. I didn't hate tech. I hated the way the job sucked every last bit of creativity out of me. The turning point came one night at around 2 a.m. after a 14-hour shift. I got home, cracked open a warm beer, the fridge was busted, and sat in my apartment surrounded by 3 dead succulents and a pile of unopened mail. I opened Instagram to distract myself and scrolled through this ad for yet another overpriced standing desk. That's when it hit me, not a brilliant product idea, but the realization that I was part of the problem. I bought dumb stuff like that because I wanted a better work environment, even if it was just a placebo. So I thought, what if I built something for people like me? Not another desk or chair, but something stupid, simple, and affordable that made work suck slightly less? That's how the seed for my company, Vibe Panels, got planted. The idea was basic, customizable, magnetic acoustic panels that doubled as a workspace mood board. You could slap them on your wall, stick notes or art on them, and not feel like you were slowly rotting in a gray box. Cheap materials, sleek design, simple utility. I wasn't trying to change the world, just make work from home 5% more bearable. The first hurdle was, I had no money. I took a $1,500 cash advance on my credit card, spent $200 on fabric and foam samples, and borrowed my cousin's Cricut machine to prototype the magnetic surface. I made 5 panels in my tiny kitchen using a hot glue gun and prayers. Posted them on Etsy with some mock-up photos I staged using my sister's DSLR. First week? Nothing. Second week? Still nothing. Third week, I got one order from a user named Succulent Murderer. Fitting. Then came 2 more, then 5. I messaged each buyer personally, thanked them, and asked what they liked and didn't. I made changes based on their feedback. By month 3, I had sold 120 panels. I was working nights and weekends packing orders, cutting fabric, and mailing boxes out of my living room, which now looked like a Joe and fabrics exploded. I was still working my IT job by day and lying to my boss about why I kept taking mental health days. It got real when I got an email from a small co-working space in Portland asking if I could do a bulk order. I had no clue how to scale. I'd never done wholesale, never managed inventory, never even negotiated a real price before. But I said yes. I pulled another $3,000 off a card, sourced better foam from a local supplier, hired a college student to help with packing, and worked on a custom set for them. That order paid my rent for 3 months. Then I got ambitious. I built a Shopify store and started running $5/day Facebook ads targeting freelancers and remote workers. Engagement was low at first, but one of the ads went semi-viral thanks to a meme I used in the caption. A productivity influencer with 150K followers reposted my product and called it functional aesthetic dopamine. Whatever that meant, it worked. Orders went from 10 a week to 50, then 90. At that point, I realized I couldn't keep making these things in my kitchen. I looked for local light manufacturing facilities and found a small family-run upholstery shop that agreed to partner with me for production. I gave them my process, paid them half up front, and drove the panels to a new packing/storage unit myself. I hired 2 part-timers off Craigslist to manage fulfillment. I officially quit my job 6 months after my first Etsy listing. Fast forward to year 2, we broke $500K in sales. Not a million, but far more than I imagined. I had a real team now for people, including my first hire, Sophia, who started as a packer and now runs customer service and social. I gave her equity this year because honestly, she earned it more than I did. There were a ton of mistakes along the way. I ordered 3,000 magnets once without testing the strength, and half the batch was too weak to hold paper. Lost $4,200 on that. Another time, I tried doing international shipping before understanding customs forms. That was a 3-week-long nightmare that ended with 3 refunds and 1 panel held hostage in Germany. I also had a business partner briefly, a friend from college, who I brought on to help with finances and marketing. Turned out he was siphoning its spend into his side project of his own. That fallout nearly wrecked our cash flow, but I recovered. Barely. Still, I've never taken outside funding. Everything's bootstrapped. We're not trying to be the next Apple. I want Vibe Panels to stay weird, stay human, and actually care about the people buying our stuff. Our best marketing still comes from customer photos and word of mouth. The DIY vibes are part of the charm. Now, we're getting requests from larger brands to do co-branded panels for their remote teams. I just signed a deal with a major productivity software company, can't say who yet, NDA, to design a limited run of workspace kits. We're also testing a line of focus frames, same concept, but with LED edges and sound-absorbing cores for video calls. Not sure if that'll fly, but I've learned to test small and fail fast. The weirdest part of all this? I still don't really consider myself an entrepreneur. I'm just a tired guy who hated his job and built something dumb that made people smile. And I think that's the whole point. You don't need to invent the next Tesla. Sometimes success is just solving a problem no one took seriously before, and doing it with just enough charm that people root for you. If you're reading this and sitting on an idea that seems too small, try it. Give yourself permission to suck at first. Talk to your first 10 customers like they're family. Learn fast, stay honest, and duct tape it together until it starts to work. I'm still in debt, still learning, still gluing foam panels at 1 a.m. sometimes. But for the first time in my adult life, I love what I do. And that's worth more than any exit. I never thought selling cardboard would change my life. Let me start by saying I wasn't born into business. I was a high school teacher. For nearly 9 years, I taught economics to bored teenagers who were more interested in TikTok trends than supply and demand. I was passionate, but burnt out. Parents blamed me for bad grades, students blamed me for their lack of motivation, and my paycheck barely covered rent in our mid-sized Ohio town. Then COVID hit. Suddenly, I was teaching from a laptop in my kitchen while trying to homeschool my 2 kids. My wife, who worked in hospitality, got laid off. With 2/3 of our income gone, I started looking for side hustles. Uber Eats didn't make sense. I couldn't risk getting sick. Selling stuff online sounded more appealing, but we had nothing valuable to sell. So, I started reading forums, Reddit, and weird side hustle blogs. I kept seeing these threads about reselling packaging supplies. At first, it sounded like a scam. Who the hell buys used boxes? Then I looked in my garage. We had boxes from Amazon, Home Depot, Old Moving Days. A whole damn wall of cardboard. I listed 10 of them on Facebook Marketplace, $1 each, for local pickup only. They sold in an hour. That seemed like a fluke, so I listed more. Same result. Then I bundled them. 10 boxes for $8. They went even faster. I started digging deeper and realized there was a whole shadow economy around moving boxes, shipping supplies, and storage. Small businesses needed boxes. People moving needed boxes. The problem was timing. Nobody ever wanted to drive across town for 2 boxes. But if you had bundles, you were gold. So I drove to local recycling centers. Most let me take what I wanted. I found a U-Haul drop-off location that threw away dozens of practically new boxes every week. I offered to haul them away. For free. They were happy to say yes. By week 4, I had cleared $300 in profits. It wasn't glamorous. My garage looked like a warehouse. My kids joked that I was the box man. But every box I sold felt like a little middle finger to the system that paid me $42K a year to educate kids who didn't want to learn. I expanded to tape, bubble wrap, and corner protectors. I found a wholesaler in Indiana who would let me buy returns and overstock supplies in bulk. Minimum order was $500. I used a credit card with a 0% APR for 12 months. Risky, yes, but I felt alive. I built a simple website using Shopify. No coding, no fancy theme, just photos, a logo I paid $15 for on Fiverr, and a checkout button. I called the business Boxed Right. Dumb name, but memorable. I connected Stripe and started taking orders. Facebook Marketplace still gave me the most traffic, but word spread. 3 months in, I was making $100/month. I kept teaching during the day, but every night I was sorting boxes, checking inventory, managing pickups. My garage was too small, so I rented a 10 by 15 storage unit. My wife thought I was losing it, but I saw the trends. People were starting businesses from home, candle makers, Etsy stores, Amazon flippers. All of them needed packaging. And cardboard? It was recession-proof. By month 6, I made $700 profit. I stopped using the credit card and reinvested every dollar. Then I got a call from a guy who ran a moving company. He had 300 boxes a month he didn't want to throw out. I offered to buy them for $0.25 each and resell for $1. The margin was insane. He became my supplier. At month 10, I finally told my principal I was quitting. He didn't believe me at first. I had tenure, benefits, summers off. But I had built something of my own, and even though it involved tape guns and cardboard, it felt more meaningful. I moved out of the storage unit and into a 1,000 square foot warehouse. I hired my first part-time helper, Carlos, a guy I met while picking up pallets at a supply shop. He'd just gotten out of jail and was looking for honest work. He became the backbone of my operation. Year 2, we hit $168,000 in gross revenue. We added a service for custom-sized boxes. I bought a used box slaughter from an auction for $2,300. That machine alone brought in $20K in its first 3 months. I started bundling kits for small e-commerce shops, 10 boxes, 2 rolls of tape, labels, bubble wrap, all neatly packed and shipped in, well, a box. I learned how to game Google Ads. I built SEO content that ranked for cheap moving boxes near me. I partnered with local realtors, offering box bundles to their clients and paying them $25 per referral. Suddenly, I wasn't just a cardboard guy. I was running a logistics-adjacent brand. In year 3, we cleared $310K in revenue with 27% profit margins. By this point, I had 2 employees and a rented van. We handled pickups, deliveries, custom orders, and liquidation sales from failed e-commerce businesses. I bought out a candle company that went under and sold their shipping supplies for a 400% return. My former coworkers didn't understand. My dad thought it was a phase. But the numbers didn't lie. I was making more than triple my old salary, I saw my kids more, and I wasn't grading essays at midnight. Now, 5 years in, BoxedRight is a real company. We own a 3,500 square foot warehouse. I have a general manager, a small team of drivers, and a customer base of over 4,000 small businesses. We launched an app for local pickup scheduling, and we're looking into franchising next year. We don't advertise the fact that many of our boxes are reused, but our customers don't care. They want affordable, sturdy packaging and fast service. The eco-friendly angle is a bonus. I never expected sustainability to be our brand pillar, but it happened naturally. If you told me in 2019 that I'd make a living off used cardboard, I would have laughed in your face. But today, I wake up every morning excited to go to work because I built it. One ugly, beat-up box at a time. In 2017, I walked out of a meeting at the startup I helped build for 4 years and knew I was done. The founder, a friend from college, had just told me we were pivoting again, this time from B2B SaaS to a blockchain-based lifestyle app. We had 6 months of runway left, no product, and a team burning out fast. I didn't wait to be pushed out. I left. At 31, with some savings and a bruised ego, I moved into a small 1-bedroom in Oakland and started freelancing. I did growth marketing for early-stage startups and made enough to live, but I felt like a side character in everyone else's story. I wanted something of my own again, but I wasn't going to build a VC-backed rocket ship. I wanted to build a real business, something profitable, manageable, and mine. The idea came to me in the least glamorous way possible, watching my neighbor yell at a broken laundromat machine. We shared a dilapidated building with 2 washers and 2 dryers in the basement. They were ancient. Coin only. No notification system. No refunds if they ate your quarters. Over the next few months, I started noticing the same cycle. People getting pissed, calling the building manager, who never picked up, going to the laundromat 4 blocks away. I realized doing laundry was still stuck in the 90s for a lot of people. I started asking people what they hated most about it. The pain points were consistent. Asterisk machines that didn't work, asterisk coin-only systems, asterisk no visibility into machine availability, asterisk zero customer service, so I made a simple hypothesis. What if I could offer modern, app-enabled laundry machines to small apartment buildings and handle the headache for landlords? I didn't invent anything new. Big companies like CSC and Wash already served massive buildings, but they were notorious for bad service and expensive, long-term contracts. I figured there was room for a better option for buildings with 4 to 20 units. I called it Spin Cycle. My MVP was scrappy. I found a 6-unit building in Fruitvale whose landlord was a friend of a friend. Their washer had just broken, and they were considering removing the machines altogether. I pitched them. I'd buy and install 2 new machines with app-enabled payments, handle service and support, and split the profits 50/50. They said yes. I spent $3,400 on 2 refurbished machines and a Raspberry Pi-based IT kit that let users start the machine with an app, a solution I found from a small hardware startup. I built a super basic web app with Twilio integration that sent users a text when their cycle was done. I didn't even bother with iOS/Android apps at first, just a QR code on the wall. In the first month, the building pulled in $287 in laundry revenue. Not much, but the landlord was happy. More importantly, I got 6 more buildings in the next 60 days, all from word of mouth. I was profitable in month 4. Over the next 18 months, I reinvested every dime. I built a more robust back-end system, worked with a local technician to handle maintenance, and found a supplier for better refurbished machines. I charged a $500 install fee per building, waived if they signed a 12-month contract, and I started offering 60/40th splits for landlords who gave me exclusivity. In year 2, I had 42 buildings under management across the Bay Area and had hired 2 part-time employees, a technician and a customer support rep. Then COVID hit. At first, I panicked. A lot of tenants lost their jobs. One landlord paused payouts. But the business turned out to be COVID resilient. People still needed clean clothes. And with laundromats closing or limiting access, my usage increased. I doubled down, installing in another 28 buildings that year. In 2021, I hit $870K in gross revenue with a 34% profit margin. Still no investors, no debt. But I made a big mistake. I tried to scale too fast into LA. I figured the model would translate easily: dense housing, lots of aging infrastructure, tech-savvy renters. But LA was a different beast. The buildings were more spread out, traffic killed technician response times, and I couldn't find reliable local partners. I spent $74K trying to set up operations there and had to shut it down 6 months later. Lesson learned: geographic expansion wasn't copy-paste. I returned focus to the Bay Area, but with a new strategy. I started developing a subscription plan for landlords $79/month per machine, flat rate, with unlimited service. Some landlords preferred the simplicity. I tested it on 5 buildings. All 5 renewed after 6 months. By mid-2022, it was my fastest growing product line. Last year, we hit $1.46 million in revenue. We now operate in 96 buildings with over 400 machines deployed. I employ 6 people full-time. We still haven't taken a dollar of outside funding. And I still live in the same 1-bedroom, though I upgraded the couch. What's wild is how unsexy this business is. Laundry? IoT retrofits? Revenue share models? It doesn't exactly scream innovation, but it works. People want convenience. Landlords want fewer complaints. And tenants just want to know the machine will work and not eat their socks. Now I'm exploring franchising the model to cities like Portland and Seattle, but I'm taking it slow. I've learned the pain of scaling poorly. I'd rather be a boring, profitable company than a headline that burned out chasing unicorn status. If you're reading this thinking about starting something, don't wait for the perfect idea. Look for things that piss people off. If someone's yelling at a machine, there's probably a business opportunity nearby. You don't need to be a genius. You just need to give a damn and be a little more reliable than whatever's out there. I was 32, broke, and living in my sister's basement when I decided to start a luxury soap company. Not just any soap. My idea was obnoxious. Handcrafted, organic, small batch, artisan soap bars made with goat milk, shea butter, and essential oils. The kind of stuff you'd expect to see on a lifestyle influencer's story while she's sipping oat milk lattes in a white marble kitchen. I had no experience with skincare. I didn't even use soap consistently back then, to be honest. But I was desperate. My life had just fallen apart. 3 months prior, I'd been let go from my job as a digital marketing manager at a startup that folded practically overnight. My savings dried up fast, and after my girlfriend dumped me, gracefully, but still, I had no choice but to move back to Ohio and crash in my younger sister's basement, a place that smelled like damp carpet and broken dreams. I spent my days doom-scrolling LinkedIn, pretending to job hunt, and eating her kids' dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets. Then one night, after watching a random YouTube video on weird 6-figure businesses, I stumbled across a woman who made $200,000 a year selling homemade soap on Etsy. I remember laughing out loud. Soap? Really? But the idea stuck. The next day, I went to Hobby Lobby and bought a melt and pour soap kit for $24.99. I used a coupon. I made my first batch in my sister's kitchen while she was at work. It smelled like lavender and citrus. It looked like wobbly beige cheese, but it was oddly satisfying. I was hooked. Over the next 2 weeks, I deep dived into soap forums, YouTube tutorials, Reddit threads, and anything else I could find. Cold process, lye safety, super fat ratios. It was like discovering a weird underground science club. I started experimenting daily, documenting everything in a beat-up spiral notebook and on a burner Instagram account. I gave bars away to my sister's coworkers and posted their reactions, with consent. I ran polls. I learned which scents made people feel calm and which ones reminded them of their ex. My sister, to her credit, was supportive up to a point. She drew the line when I left a tray of half-cured soap bars in the freezer next to her breast milk. So I found a small commercial kitchen that rented space by the hour and put the last $480 in my bank account into supplies. I bought custom molds, high-quality essential oils, eco-friendly packaging, and a cheap printer. I came up with a name, Mistral and Clay. It sounded fancy, coastal, maybe French. Perfect for the aesthetic I was going for. I launched on Etsy with 8 bar types and an average price of $9.99 per bar. No sales the first week. I refreshed the analytics so much I think I developed carpal tunnel. But I didn't give up. I made content. So much. Content. Soap cutting videos. Packaging videos. ASMR lather tests. I cross-posted to Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok. I DM'd influencers with fewer than 10,000 followers, offering to send free boxes. Most ignored me. Some didn't. One of them, an earthy mom blogger with a following of about 25K, shared my soap in a casual unboxing story. I got 34 orders in 12 hours. That moment felt like I'd won the lottery. I packed every order by hand, wrote a thank you note in each one, and obsessively checked tracking updates. The dopamine rush of positive reviews was like crack. People loved the scents, the packaging, the branding. They even posted photos of their bathrooms with the soap on little wooden trays. That's when I knew I was onto something. 3 months in, I hit $10K in sales. I reinvested every penny into more supplies and bought a Shopify subscription to set up a real store. I taught myself basic SEO and ran some paid ads, badly, at first. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was relentless. I listened to e-commerce podcasts while pouring soap at 2 a.m. and read case studies between trips to the post office. Then I got lucky. A niche subscription box for women's self-care products featured one of my bars in a spring box. They needed 1,200 units in 3 weeks. I negotiated a wholesale price that barely left room for profit, but I said yes. I worked like a dog, roped in my cousin and her teenage son to help wrap and label, and delivered the order on time. That exposure blew up my store. Orders flooded in. I was making more money than I had in my last full-time job. I upgraded to a small studio, hired 2 part-time helpers, and expanded the product line to include sugar scrubs, body butters, and limited edition seasonal scents. Mistral and Clay hit 6 figures in its first full year. I couldn't believe it. People started asking me to mentor them. I got invited to speak at small business panels. A local boutique stocked my products, and then a second one in Chicago. I even got a cease and desist letter from a European skincare company with a similar name, which felt like a weird badge of honor. I didn't fight it, just rebranded to Wilder Suds and moved on. There were disasters, too. One time, a bad batch of oil spoiled an entire run of 200 bars and made everything smell like moldy pickles. I cried in the car. Another time, I ran a discount code that accidentally applied to wholesale orders, and someone got 80 bars for less than $100. I fulfilled it anyway. Lessons learned. Now, 3 years in, we're a small but mighty team of 5. We ship worldwide. Our bestseller, Himalayan Rose and Cardamom, has been featured in 2 magazines and 3 influencer gift guides. And yes, I now shower daily and use soap religiously. I never expected to be in this business. I never cared about bath products before, but now I live and breathe this stuff. I know where every ingredient comes from, what scents work in which seasons, what packaging trends are dying, and which TikTok audio will move 200 units in a weekend. Most importantly, I got my life back. The basement's a memory now. I've got a small apartment downtown, a dog named Saffron, and a fridge full of real food. I don't check job listings anymore. I don't need to, because I built something out of nothing, out of soap. And I'll never forget the day that saved me. When I picked up a lavender-scented bar, wrapped it in twine, and thought, maybe this could work. It did. Hey, friends, if you enjoy this content, Don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. I never intended to be an entrepreneur. I was a 30-year-old middle manager in a mid-sized marketing firm in Indianapolis, married, one kid, and honestly just kind of coasting. I had a stable job, a boss who didn't hate me, and I was good at what I did. I wasn't dreaming of yachts or private jets. I wanted a finished basement and a grill that didn't rust. This story starts the day I got fired. It wasn't personal. The company merged with a bigger firm from Chicago, and middle management got chopped like a bad reality show. I walked in on a Tuesday and walked out an hour later with a severance package, a cardboard box, and a mix of panic and disbelief. I spent the first week unemployed playing with my daughter, drinking too much coffee, and pretending I wasn't spiraling. But at night, the existential dread kicked in. I'd stare at the ceiling thinking, what the hell now? Then something strange happened. I was cleaning out the garage one afternoon and found an old notebook from when I was fresh out of college. And it was a scribbled idea from a decade ago. Coffee subscription for office workers. No BS. Fresh beans. Killer branding. I remember being excited about it back then, but life got in the way. Rent, student loans, marriage, kid. I put the notebook down and went on LinkedIn to apply for jobs I didn't want. But the idea stuck. It followed me around like a mosquito in a tent. I started tinkering. First it was late night Googling about roasting beans, drop shipping, branding. Then I ordered a bunch of sample beans from a few local roasters and did blind taste tests with friends and neighbors. People liked the idea. They especially liked the name I'd come up with in the shower, Grindsmith. It sounded like a real company, like something people would pay money for. I had $12,000 left after severance and bills. Against every logical fiber in my being, I decided to try building this thing. Not to make millions. I just wanted to see if I could turn this forgotten notebook scribble into something real. I built a website on Shopify in 2 weeks using templates, watched hours of YouTube tutorials, and learned enough about Squarespace and digital marketing to fake it. I used half my remaining cash to buy a starter batch of beans from a small batch roaster who agreed to white label for me. My wife was skeptical but supportive. Just don't lose the house, she said, which seemed like a reasonable ask. The launch was anticlimactic. I emailed 87 people from my personal network. Friends, old co-workers, college roommates. I posted on Facebook and Instagram. Nothing viral. No explosion. But I got 11 subscriptions that first week. I'll never forget the thrill of seeing the Shopify cha-ching sound on my phone. 11 people had paid $24.99 a month for Grindsmith. It was validation. It was real. From there, it became a grind. Pun fully intended. I personally packed every shipment in our garage. I wrote handwritten notes to every new customer. I answered every email myself. I started a weekly newsletter with coffee facts, brewing tips, and occasional memes. People responded. They liked that it felt personal. By month 4, I had 200 active subscribers. That's when things got messy. The roaster I'd been working with got bought out by a bigger supplier and jacked up their prices. I scrambled to find a new supplier while fielding complaints about shipping delays and stale beans. I made rookie mistakes, sent 2 customers the wrong orders, forgot to update the website for a major promotion, and almost ran out of packaging because I miscalculated lead times. There were nights I wanted to quit. Nights I did the math and realized I was making less than minimum wage. I had friends who were getting promoted to VP roles while I was Googling how to remove coffee oil stains from cardboard. But around month 7, I hit my first lucky break. A small YouTuber in the coffee space did a review of Grindsmith after I sent him a free box and a note. The video got 40,000 views, and overnight I got 400 new subscriptions. I had to call in favors, rope in family, and spend the entire weekend packing boxes, but it felt like the start of something. With that momentum, I reinvested everything into better packaging, a second roaster, and a part-time college student to help with fulfillment. I started learning Facebook ads, not outsourcing, but really learning. I AI/B tested copy like a man possessed. I tweaked the landing page constantly. By year 2, we had over 4,000 subscribers. I finally paid myself a salary, modest, but better than any job I'd applied to after being laid off. My wife started working part-time for the business. We moved operations out of the garage into a rented workspace. We hired our first full-time employee, then another. It wasn't explosive growth, but it was solid. Word of mouth was our biggest channel. People liked the story. They liked the branding. They liked that it didn't feel like a soulless corporate subscription. And then came year 3, the curveball. A major national subscription box company reached out. They wanted to feature us in a curated monthly box. We'd have to supply 25,000 units in 4 months. It would be more orders than we'd done in the previous 2 years combined. I was terrified. It could be the biggest break or a disaster. We took the deal. We scaled up, begged the bank for a short-term loan, hired temporary help, and barely made the deadline. But we pulled it off. That box went out. The reviews came in. Our website traffic quadrupled. Within 2 months, we had 9,000 active subscribers. 6 months later, 15,000. And now, 3.5 years after that Tuesday morning layoff, Grindsmith is a team of 18 people, a downtown office, a roasting partner on the West Coast, and we just crossed $3.2 million in annual revenue. I still wake up some days waiting for it to all fall apart. Maybe that never goes away. But I also wake up knowing I built something from nothing. Not for the yacht or the grill, but for the freedom and the pride. And if you're reading this at 3 a.m. wondering what you're doing with your life after a layoff or a failed business or just a rough week, I'll say this: don't wait for perfect. Start messy. Start small. Start tired and scared. But start, because it might just change everything. A few years ago, I was stuck in a job I hated. I was working in a cubicle at a tech company, dealing with customer service calls all day long. It was draining. I had a degree in marketing, but the job I found straight out of college wasn't aligned with my skills or interests. My friends and family used to tell me, "Don't worry, it's just a stepping stone," but I had a sinking feeling that this was going to be my life forever. I couldn't shake the thought that I was meant for something more, something bigger, something of my own. One evening, after a particularly miserable day at work, I found myself scrolling through social media while sitting at my kitchen table. I had just gotten home, and my dinner consisted of microwave leftovers, so I figured I might as well waste the next hour doing something that could take my mind off the constant dread I felt every morning before I went to sleep. That's when I saw a post about a guy who had started a small online business selling custom t-shirts. He was making over $100K a month, and it sounded too good to be true. I dismissed it at first, thinking that the market for custom shirts was probably oversaturated, and he must have been lucky. But something about the idea of being my own boss clicked with me, and I found myself Googling ways to start an online store. My heart was racing. I hadn't felt this excited about something in a long time. I went down a rabbit hole of YouTube tutorials and articles. Within a couple of weeks, I had a basic plan in mind. I wasn't going to dive into the custom t-shirt business. I had a different idea. I loved hiking and being outdoors, so I decided to create a brand that sold eco-friendly outdoor gear. There was a growing demand for sustainable products, and I thought I could tap into that niche while still aligning with my passion. The first hurdle was money. I didn't have much saved up, and my job wasn't exactly helping me build a financial cushion. But I knew I needed to take a leap. I convinced myself that I could scrape together enough to get started by selling a few items I didn't need and borrowing a little from my savings. The total amount I had to work with was about $2,000. It wasn't much, but I was determined to make it work. I spent the next few months working on my business plan. I took a deep dive into researching suppliers for eco-friendly outdoor gear, found a web developer to help me set up a basic e-commerce site, and started building my brand. I also took to Instagram and Facebook, creating content that would resonate with the outdoor community. Every free moment I had, I poured into this idea. Launching the website felt like a huge gamble. My heart pounded the day I made it live. I didn't have a huge following, so I wasn't expecting immediate success. But I was hopeful, cautiously optimistic. The first month was slow. Like, really slow. I had a couple of sales, but they came from people I knew, friends and family who wanted to support me. My website didn't get much traffic, and my social media posts only got a few likes here and there. But I wasn't ready to give up just yet. I kept pushing, learning from the mistakes I made, improving my SEO, and testing different types of content. After 6 months, I made my first substantial sale, and it came from someone I didn't know. I was ecstatic. I remember jumping up and down in my living room when I saw the order confirmation come through. I wasn't making millions, but I had proven that people were willing to buy from me, and that was a huge win in my book. I invested the little profits I made back into the business. I hired a freelance graphic designer to create better branding and packaging. I worked on refining my messaging, making sure it spoke to the values of sustainability and outdoor adventure that my audience cared about. Slowly but surely, things started to improve. By the end of year one, I had increased my revenue to about $50,000. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was enough to quit my job. I was scared, but the idea of spending another day in that cubicle was scarier. So, I handed in my resignation and became a full-time entrepreneur. The first few months as my own boss were a whirlwind. I was working harder than ever before, often putting in 12-hour days, but I was finally doing something I was passionate about. It felt like I was no longer living for the weekends or dreading Monday mornings. The next big milestone came about a year after I quit my job. I secured a partnership with a larger outdoor gear company that shared my commitment to sustainability. It was a game changer. They had access to more customers, more resources, and more credibility. Together, we were able to launch a co-branded line of products that sold like hotcakes. By the end of that year, I hit my first $200,000 in revenue, and things started to snowball from there. With the added revenue, I hired a small team to help with operations, marketing, and customer service. I was able to expand my product line, bringing in new gear that would appeal to a broader range of outdoor enthusiasts. We also started offering eco-friendly packaging and a recycling program to further align with our brand's mission. But it wasn't always smooth sailing. There were plenty of obstacles along the way. There were supply chain issues that delayed orders for weeks, customer complaints about products not meeting expectations, and moments when I thought I might be in over my head. I had a lot of sleepless nights wondering if I had made the right decision. One of the most difficult challenges came when a competitor started copying our product designs and marketing strategies. It was frustrating and infuriating to see someone essentially taking credit for the work we had done. I had to take legal action, which was both costly and time-consuming. The situation took a toll on my mental health, and for a while, I doubted whether it was worth continuing. But I kept telling myself that I had built something meaningful and that I couldn't let one setback derail my dream. Fast forward to today, and my business is still growing. We've expanded into international markets, and our products are now sold in over 15 countries. We've become known for our high-quality, eco-conscious outdoor gear, and our customer base continues to grow every year. In fact, we're now doing close to $1.5 million in annual revenue, and it feels surreal. I still have moments where I have to pinch myself because I can't believe how far I've come from that miserable job in a cubicle. Looking back, I'm so glad I took the leap. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but every challenge along the way taught me something valuable. I've learned that being an entrepreneur isn't just about making money. It's about perseverance, creativity, and a willingness to adapt when things don't go as planned. To anyone out there who's stuck in a job they hate, wondering if they could ever do something on their own, my advice is simple. Start small, stay consistent, and never underestimate the power of persistence. If you have a passion, a vision, and the willingness to work hard, you can build something that changes your life. But you have to be ready to take the leap, even if you're scared. Because that's when the real adventure begins. A few years ago, I was just a regular guy working a 9-to-5 job. I had dreams, but they were the kind of dreams that always felt out of reach, like they belonged to someone else, not to me. I didn't come for money, I didn't have any special skills, and I definitely didn't have any connections. But somehow, in the back of my mind, I always knew that I wanted to start my own business. The problem was, I didn't know where to begin, and I had no idea how people even made it work. I've been working in a corporate office for a few years, making decent money but feeling completely unfulfilled. I watched the clock tick by every day, waiting for my shift to end. And, like a lot of people, I would end up wasting time on Reddit or scrolling through Instagram, seeing all these entrepreneurs living their best lives, making money from their laptops while traveling the world. It looked so easy. But it wasn't just the glamour that attracted me, it was the freedom. The freedom to make decisions for myself, the ability to create something meaningful. It was everything I wanted but didn't know how to achieve. One day, it hit me. Why was I wasting time feeling sorry for myself when I could do something? So, I decided to take a leap. I had saved up a small amount of money and figured, if I didn't try now, I never would. I decided I was going to try building a brand. The problem was, I had no clue what kind of business to start. I tried brainstorming every idea I could think of. An online store, a blog, even a podcast. But none of it clicked. Then, one day, I was walking through the grocery store and saw this section of kitchen gadgets. There were these ridiculous tools that I had never seen before. Things like a garlic peeler that looked like a miniature rolling pin and an avocado slicer that looked like a medieval torture device. I laughed to myself, thinking, who buys this stuff? But then, it occurred to me, people buy all sorts of ridiculous things online. Maybe there was a niche for this. I spent the next week researching the market. I Googled things like kitchen gadgets and trending products and quickly realized that the space was full of possibilities. I also found that people were buying these types of items on places like Amazon and eBay. There were tons of YouTube reviews and blog posts about the latest kitchen tools. But what struck me most was that a lot of these products weren't being marketed well. Many of them had awful packaging, unprofessional branding, and almost no social media presence. That was the moment when I thought, this could be it. I could take these products and brand them in a way that would appeal to people who liked novelty kitchen items but also wanted quality. The next step was figuring out how to actually get these products. I had no idea how to source items from manufacturers, but thanks to Google and YouTube, I found a few websites where you could contact suppliers directly. I spent hours reaching out to different companies, getting quotes, and trying to negotiate prices. Eventually, I found a small supplier in China who agreed to work with me. I placed a small order, not wanting to risk too much money up front, and I started working on branding. I didn't have much experience with graphic design, but I had learned some basic skills in Photoshop during my college days. I spent nights designing a logo, choosing colors, and deciding on the look I wanted for the brand. I called it Gizmo Gourmet. I wanted it to sound fun and appealing, but also like something people would trust. The brand name seemed to fit the quirky kitchen gadgets I had in mind. After a few weeks, I finally had everything ready. My products were on the way, my website was up, and I was all set to launch. The first few months were rough. I barely sold anything. I spent countless hours learning about digital marketing, running Facebook ads, and trying to figure out how to get people to notice my website. I spent so much time learning about SEO and content marketing that my eyes would hurt from staring at the screen. I also discovered that the competition in the kitchen gadget space was fierce. There were already established brands that had more resources, better products, and bigger audiences. But I couldn't give up. This was my dream, and I knew I had to keep pushing forward. One day, I decided to try something different. I started reaching out to influencers in the cooking and lifestyle space, offering to send them free products in exchange for a review. I was lucky enough to get a response from a small but well-known food blogger who agreed to feature one of my products in a post. It wasn't a viral sensation, but it did result in a few sales. That small boost gave me the motivation to keep going. As the months went by, I started getting more consistent orders. It wasn't fast or easy, but it was happening. I began to learn about the nuances of running an e-commerce business. I discovered the importance of customer service, how to handle returns, and how to optimize my website for conversions. Slowly but surely, the sales started to climb. I reinvested the profits into expanding my product line, adding new gadgets that were even more niche and fun. And while my profits were still modest, I was finally seeing some momentum. But the real breakthrough came when I decided to double down on social media. I focused on creating content that would resonate with my audience, funny, relatable videos showing the products in action. I created a TikTok account and started making short videos showcasing my gadgets in a comedic way. To my surprise, some of the videos went viral. Sales skyrocketed, and suddenly, I found myself with thousands of new followers, customers, and people who were genuinely excited about the products. That was the turning point for me. My brand started to grow rapidly, and within a year, I had gone from scraping by with a side hustle to running a full-fledged business. I hired my first employee, a social media manager who helped me scale even faster, and expanded my operations to meet the growing demand. I also began outsourcing more of the production process, working with larger suppliers who could help me source high-quality products at scale. Today, Gizmo Gourmet is a thriving online store, and I'm proud of what I've built. I've made mistakes along the way, trust me, there were a lot of sleepless nights, but I've learned valuable lessons about perseverance, marketing, and most importantly, believing in myself. It's not easy, but when you put in the effort, take risks, and never give up, anything is possible. Looking back, I realized that all those hours spent scrolling through Reddit weren't a waste. They were the moments that made me realize what I wanted out of life. The only difference now is that I'm the one sharing my story, and maybe, just maybe, it'll inspire someone else to take the leap. So if you're reading this and wondering whether you should take that first step towards starting your own business, do it. It won't be easy, and it won't be fast, but if you're willing to put in the work, it can be the most rewarding decision you ever make. And trust me, when it finally clicks, it feels like the best kind of success. I remember the day I decided to start my business like it was yesterday. It was a crisp autumn afternoon in 2017, and I was sitting in my cramped, dimly lit apartment in a bustling city. The kind of place you only rent because you're chasing something bigger but can't quite see what that something is yet. I had just left my corporate job, the one where I was climbing the ladder, but I felt empty. For a long time, I had this burning desire to do something on my own, but I kept suppressing it, thinking I wasn't ready, thinking I didn't have the skills or the right connections. One day, while scrolling through my feed on social media, I saw a post that made me pause. It was from a friend who had quit his own corporate job months before and was talking about how he'd built a successful side hustle into a full-time business. I was happy for him, but I was also envious. I envied his freedom, his ability to create something from scratch and make it work. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I thought about my own situation, a corporate job that paid the bills but didn't ignite any passion. I had always been into fitness and wellness, and people constantly came to me for advice on diets, workouts, and healthy living. What if I could turn my knowledge into something tangible? What if I could create a business where I helped others get healthier, feel better, and improve their lives? That's when the idea of starting a fitness coaching business began to take shape. I didn't have a grand plan. In fact, the first few months were more about trial and error than anything else. I didn't have the money to hire fancy consultants or marketing experts. I didn't even know how to build a website. I started by offering personalized workout and nutrition plans to a few friends and family members. In exchange, I asked for feedback, testimonials, and referrals. It was slow at first, but I was building momentum, even if it didn't feel like it. One thing I knew for sure was that I had to be authentic. There were already plenty of fitness coaches out there who had flashy Instagram accounts and paid advertisements, but I didn't want to be like them. I wanted to create something real. I wanted people to know that I wasn't just about selling them a product or service. I was genuinely invested in their health and well-being. I spent hours reading, watching videos, and taking online courses. I learned about social media marketing, personal branding, and how to effectively connect with potential clients. I started to post my own workout routines, share client success stories, and write about the struggles of living a healthy life. Slowly, my following grew. It wasn't huge at first, maybe a few hundred people, but those few hundred people were engaged. They were commenting on my posts, sharing their own experiences, and asking for advice. At the same time, I was working full-time. I'd wake up early to work on my business before heading to the office. During lunch breaks, I'd sit in my car, answering emails and posting on social media. After work, I'd head to the gym to train clients or work on new content for my website. It was exhausting, but I was fueled by a sense of purpose that I had never felt before. But then, in early 2018, my world flipped upside down. I got a call from my boss. The company was going through a restructuring, and my position was being eliminated. My first instinct was panic. What would I do now? I had no savings. I didn't have a backup plan. I wasn't ready to go full-time into my business yet. But then something clicked. I realized I was being given an opportunity, a chance to put everything I had into building the business I had been dreaming about. I remember sitting on the couch, looking out the window, and thinking to myself, this is the moment. It's now or never. I didn't have the luxury of time to waste. I immediately started working on my business full-time. I hired a mentor to guide me, someone who had built their own successful fitness business. I invested in paid ads, something I had been hesitant to do before because of my limited budget. I revamped my website, added more services, and started offering group coaching calls. The first few months were a roller coaster. I was constantly hustling, trying to make my name known. There were days when I felt like I was getting nowhere, when I wasn't signing any new clients, when my bank account was running dangerously low. But I kept going. I knew I was on the right path. Then, in the summer of 2018, something clicked. My business started to gain real traction. I had my first big client, a fitness influencer who had 50,000 followers on Instagram. They signed up for my coaching program, and that gave me a huge confidence boost. Shortly after, other influencers and regular people started signing up too. By the end of that year, I had hit my first six-figure revenue. It wasn't easy, and there were times when I thought about giving up, but that number was a validation that I was onto something. I had proven that my business model could work. I continued to build my brand, diversify my services, and collaborate with other fitness professionals. I even wrote an ebook on nutrition, which became another revenue stream for me. The more I worked, the more I realized that my business was no longer just about fitness. It was about empowerment, about helping people transform their lives, not just their bodies. Fast forward to 2025, and my business is thriving. I now have a team of coaches who work with me, and we offer a range of services from one-on-one coaching to corporate wellness programs. I've expanded into corporate speaking engagements and have been invited to share my story at fitness conferences around the world. But none of this would have been possible without the struggles, the late nights, and the sacrifices I made in the early days. I've learned that success doesn't happen overnight, and it's never a straight line. There are always bumps in the road, but those bumps are what help you grow. When I look back at my journey, I don't just see the milestones or the money I've made. I see the people I've helped, the lives I've impacted, and the lessons I've learned along the way. Starting my own business was the best decision I ever made, and while I still have a long way to go, I'm grateful for every step of the journey. My advice to anyone reading this is simple. If you have a dream, pursue it. It's not going to be easy. You'll face challenges, doubt yourself, and sometimes even fail. But if you keep pushing forward, learn from your mistakes, and remain true to yourself, you will eventually get where you want to go. And one day, you'll look back and realize that the journey itself was the greatest reward. That's how I built my fitness coaching business from scratch. It's been the hardest and most rewarding thing I've ever done, and I wouldn't change a thing. I was 23 when I started my first business. I had no money, no experience, and honestly, no clue what I was doing. But I had a passion for tech, gaming, and building things that people actually needed. I didn't realize at the time that this passion would be the only thing keeping me going during the darkest months of my entrepreneurial journey. It all started when I was a kid. I grew up with a natural curiosity about how things worked. I would take apart old computers and game consoles, much to my parents' dismay. They'd find their old gadgets dismantled, cables strewn across the floor, and me sitting there trying to put it all back together again. I never really got into traditional sports or music like the other kids. My thing was technology. Fast forward to my freshman year in college, and I found myself in a tough spot. I was living off ramen noodles and cheap coffee, struggling to pay for tuition and rent. My parents didn't have money to help, and I didn't want to take on too much debt. I decided to do what any broke college kid would do. I started flipping old tech. I would buy broken laptops and phones from Craigslist, fix them up, and sell them for a profit. It wasn't glamorous. I spent hours watching YouTube tutorials, learning how to replace screens, fix motherboards, and upgrade memory. It was tedious work, but it paid the bills. On my sophomore year, I had turned it into a small side hustle. Every month, I was pulling in a couple of $1,000s. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get by. But the more I worked on these repairs, the more I realized something. People didn't just want their broken tech fixed, they wanted it optimized. They wanted faster devices, better performance, and longer lifespans. The demand was there, and I could see it. One evening, after finishing a repair on a laptop, I started thinking, why don't I take this a step further? What if I build a service where people could not only get their devices fixed but also get customized upgrades? What if there was a one-stop shop for tech enthusiasts who wanted to get more out of their devices? The idea sounded great in theory, but I was about to find out just how hard turning a dream into reality would be. I didn't have any money to invest in a business. My student loans were stacking up, and I was still living paycheck to paycheck. But I had a laptop, a few tools, and a vision. So, I did what any resourceful broke person would do. I borrowed $500 from my parents to buy some basic parts, rented a tiny storage unit, and started building up my inventory. The first few months were a blur. I was balancing college, working part-time at a local tech store, and building my business. I called it Tech Boost. My idea was to offer repair services, custom upgrades, and optimization packages for laptops, phones, and gaming consoles. I put up a website, started an Instagram page, and created flyers to put up around campus. At first, nothing happened. I remember sitting in that tiny storage unit, staring at my phone, hoping for some sort of miracle. I was getting zero traction. The social media posts got a few likes from friends and family, but that was it. I was stuck in this frustrating loop of trying to promote a service no one seemed to care about. Then one day, I got a call that changed everything. A local gaming store had seen my Instagram posts and wanted to meet. They were interested in offering my services to their customers. Apparently, they had a lot of gamers coming in asking for upgrades on their laptops and PCs, but they didn't have the skills to offer that. It wasn't a huge deal, but it was a step. I met with the owner of the store, and we struck a deal. I would set up a small tech corner inside his store where I would provide repairs and upgrades, and in exchange, I'd pay him a small commission on each job. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a foot in the door. The first few weeks went by slowly. I was working in the back corner of this small gaming store, fixing laptops, upgrading graphics cards, and putting together custom PCs. It wasn't flashy, but people started to notice. Word of mouth spread, and soon, I was getting referrals from gamers, students, and even local businesses. But then disaster struck. I had just gotten my first real batch of orders, 5 custom PCs, each worth around $1,500, when my storage unit was broken into. The thief took everything. All of my parts, tools, and equipment were gone. I felt completely defeated. I had put everything I had into this business, and in one moment, it was all wiped out. I remember sitting in my car, staring at the locked storage unit, feeling like a complete failure. I wanted to quit. I wanted to throw in the towel and go back to being a broke college student. But something inside me snapped. I couldn't give up that easily. This was my dream. I immediately called my parents, asking for help. They didn't have much to give, but they sent me what they could. I took out a small loan from a local bank, and with that money, I was able to buy new parts and tools. But the worst part was the emotional toll. It was like I had lost everything I'd worked for. The next few months were the hardest. I kept my head down, worked harder than ever, and slowly rebuilt my business. I focused on getting a few loyal clients who would trust me even after the break-in. It wasn't easy, but I kept pushing forward. Over time, things started to pick up again. I hired a couple of part-time employees to help with repairs, and we expanded our services to include mobile repairs and even corporate clients. By my senior year of college, TechBoost had grown to a small but thriving business. I was no longer flipping laptops for a couple $100. I was running a legitimate service with employees, a brand, and a customer base. The most satisfying moment came when I was able to hire my first full-time employee and hand them a paycheck. It was the moment I realized I wasn't just a guy tinkering with tech in a tiny storage unit. I had built something real. After graduating, I took the leap. I moved out of the small gaming store and opened my own shop in a better location. I invested in marketing, expanded my offerings, and doubled down on the things that made my business unique: customization, quality, and customer care. Fast forward 5 years, and TechBoost is no longer a small operation. We've expanded into several cities, offering everything from PC builds to smart home installations, and we're now one of the top-rated tech repair services in the area. I've worked with major brands, collaborated with influencers, and even launched an online store for custom parts. Looking back, I can't believe how far I've come. There were days when I thought I would never make it. But every failure, every setback, every sleepless night built the foundation for what we are today. Starting a business isn't easy, and it's never glamorous. But if you have the passion, the determination, and the willingness to learn from your mistakes, you can build something amazing. And for anyone out there feeling like giving up, don't. The road may be tough, but the reward on the other side is worth it. I never expected to be an entrepreneur. Growing up, I always thought the idea of starting your own business was something for the ultra-wealthy, the ones who could afford to risk everything on a dream. I was never one of those people. I was just a regular guy from a small town, and like most people, I was taught to follow the rules, get a degree, land a job, and work my way up the ladder. The idea of taking risks and being my own boss was a pipe dream. Until one day, life threw me a curveball that forced me to rethink everything. It all started in 2015. I had just landed my dream job at a tech startup. The salary was decent, the work was challenging, and the team was full of bright, energetic people. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was on the right track. The long hours, the late-night coding sessions, the constant pressure to perform. It all felt worth it because I was on my way to success. At least, that's what I told myself. But then came the layoffs. One by one, my colleagues were let go as the company struggled to meet its financial targets. It was a gut punch for all of us. But for me, it was more than just the loss of a job. It was the sudden realization that I had placed all my hopes in the hands of a company that could cut me loose at any moment. It was a wake-up call. I wasn't in control of my future. My financial security wasn't in my hands. It was in the hands of corporate decision-makers who saw me as just another line item on a spreadsheet. I spent the next few months bouncing between odd freelance gigs and temp jobs, trying to make ends meet. It was tough. I couldn't help but think about the future, my future, and how unpredictable it all felt. I had always admired entrepreneurs, people who built businesses from the ground up. They took risks, yes, but they also had control. They were the ones who called the shots. It seemed like a far-off dream, but the more I thought about it, the more it felt like something I could do. I was tired of feeling powerless. I was tired of living paycheck to paycheck. And I was tired of waiting for someone to give me a chance. I had no formal business training, no wealthy relatives to back me up, and no idea where to start. But I had a few things going for me. I was tech-savvy, I had a decent network, and I had a relentless drive to make something of myself. I knew that if I didn't try, I would never forgive myself. So, I did what any desperate person would do. I took a leap of faith. The first step was figuring out what kind of business to start. I spent weeks brainstorming ideas, asking friends and family for their input, and researching trends in the market. I knew I wanted to create something that was scalable, something that had the potential for long-term growth. After a lot of soul-searching and trial and error, I decided to launch a software-as-a-service, SaaS, business aimed at helping small businesses streamline their customer support processes. I won't lie to you, the early days were brutal. I had no idea what I was doing. I spent countless sleepless nights coding, building, and learning everything I could about the SaaS industry. There were moments when I thought I was in over my head. The fear of failure was constant, gnawing at the back of my mind. But at the same time, there was something exhilarating about it. For the first time in my life, I was doing something that felt truly my own. Every small victory, every bug fixed, every positive email from a beta tester felt like a win. I didn't have much money to invest in marketing or advertising, so I relied on word of mouth and my own network to spread the word. Slowly but surely, I started to gain traction. The first few customers were the hardest to get, but once I had a handful of users who believed in what I was building, everything started to snowball. My software was simple but effective, and small businesses loved it. They appreciated the user-friendly interface, the customer support features, and the fact that it was affordable. But, as with anything in life, success didn't come without its hurdles. I had to deal with bugs that seemed to appear out of nowhere, scaling issues that threatened to bring the entire system down, and, of course, the constant pressure of trying to juggle everything. I was coding, managing customer service, doing marketing, handling billing, and everything in between. There were days when I felt like I was drowning in tasks, wondering how long I could keep it up. But I had no choice. I had to keep going. In the early days, I didn't take a salary. Everything I made went back into the business. I remember one night in particular, about 6 months into the business, when I sat down to pay the bills. I had just enough to cover the essentials, barely. I was living off ramen noodles, working around the clock, and constantly worrying about whether the business would survive. There was a moment when I almost gave up, but something kept me going. Maybe it was the fear of failure, or maybe it was the thought of all the people who believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. I wasn't ready to quit. By the end of the first year, I had reached a point where the business was finally sustainable. The software had a solid customer base, and I was starting to see some profits. I hired my first employee, someone who could help with customer support, so I could focus more on product development. It felt like a huge milestone. I was no longer alone in the trenches. The next few years were a blur of growth, scaling, and more learning. There were plenty of setbacks along the way. I had to pivot a few times when customer feedback made it clear that some features weren't working. I had to learn how to manage a team, handle payroll, and navigate the legal complexities of running a business. But every challenge was an opportunity to learn. Slowly, the business began to take shape into something that was bigger than I could have ever imagined. Fast forward to today, and my business has grown far beyond what I ever thought possible. We're now a small but profitable company, with a dedicated team and a loyal customer base. We've expanded our product offerings, and we're looking to scale even further. It hasn't been easy, and there have been times when I wanted to give up, but every step of the journey has been worth it. Looking back, I can hardly believe how far I've come. There were moments when I was ready to throw in the towel, moments when the future seemed uncertain, and moments when I questioned whether I was cut out for this. But the one thing I never did was give up. I kept pushing, kept learning, and kept building. And now, I'm living a life I never thought was possible, one that I built from the ground up. To anyone out there thinking about taking the leap into entrepreneurship, I'll tell you this. It's not easy, but it's the most rewarding thing you'll ever do. If you're passionate about something, if you believe in yourself, and if you're willing to put in the work, anything is possible. It won't happen overnight, but with perseverance and grit, you can make it happen. Just remember, the only thing standing between you and your dreams is the decision to take that first step. And trust me, that first step is the hardest one. But once you take it, everything else becomes possible. It was the summer of 2018 when I finally took the plunge. I had spent years working in a well-paying job at a tech firm, but every day felt like a slog. The corporate grind was slowly draining me, and I had this itch, this burning desire to create something of my own. I'd always dreamed of being an entrepreneur, but the thought of leaving the stability of my career felt like I was gambling with everything I had. Still, deep down, I knew that if I didn't make a change soon, I would wake up one day regretting that I never tried. The decision wasn't easy. It took months of internal debate, sleepless nights, and countless hours spent researching everything from startup finance to the best productivity hacks for entrepreneurs. But after that long deliberation, I handed in my resignation. My manager was supportive, and I'm pretty sure she could tell I was bursting with ideas, but I don't think she truly believed I would follow through. Most people in my life thought I was crazy. I had saved up some money, but nowhere near enough to feel completely comfortable. The truth is, I didn't have a clear-cut business plan. In fact, I had no idea what I was going to sell or even what market I was targeting. All I had was a vague idea of creating something that would help people. That's the thing about entrepreneurship. Sometimes, it's not about having all the answers right away, but about being willing to learn and adapt along the way. After quitting my job, I spent the first few weeks just thinking. I knew I wanted to build something in the tech space, but I wasn't sure where to start. I spent hours researching trends in e-commerce, digital marketing, and app development, but everything felt so overwhelming. I felt like I had so many ideas bouncing around in my head that it was hard to focus on one thing. Then, one evening, as I was brainstorming yet another idea that felt too broad and impractical, I had an epiphany. It was so simple that it almost felt stupid. Why not build a platform that connects local businesses with freelance workers who can help them with their digital marketing, social media, and content creation needs? At that point, the idea seemed genius. Local businesses were struggling to make their mark online, and freelancers were looking for more stable, long-term projects. I knew I could bridge that gap. The concept was simple, a platform that would serve as a marketplace for local businesses to find skilled freelancers, and for freelancers to get consistent work. I didn't have a technical background, but I knew enough to hire a developer to help me bring the idea to life. I spent my savings on a website, and within a few months, we had a beta version ready to go. The only problem? No one knew who we were. We had a slick website and an impressive list of features, but no users. I remember sitting in my small apartment one evening, looking at the empty dashboard and wondering if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. My friends had told me it was risky, but I never imagined it would be this hard. There were days when I didn't know how I would pay rent. I had spent every last cent building the platform, but I hadn't made a single sale. That's when I realized I had been approaching this all wrong. I had built the product, but I hadn't thought about the customers. No one cared about my fancy website or the cool features. They needed to know why this platform would make their lives easier. It was all about the value I could provide. I went back to the drawing board and started doing some serious customer research. I began reaching out to local businesses and asking them about their biggest pain points when it came to digital marketing and hiring freelancers. I learned that many small business owners felt overwhelmed by the complexity of online marketing, and they didn't have the time or resources to handle it all on their own. The feedback I received helped me refine the platform, and I realized I needed to position it as a simple, affordable solution that could help businesses grow without the headache. The next step was marketing. I had no budget for traditional advertising, so I turned to social media. I started creating educational content about digital marketing and shared it with local business owners. I offered free webinars and consultations, and gradually, people started to take notice. Slowly but surely, the platform gained traction. I reached out to freelancers, offering them discounted access to the platform in exchange for helping me spread the word. By the end of the first year, we had onboarded over 50 local businesses and had grown a small community of freelancers. It wasn't a huge success, but it was a start. The most important thing I learned in those first few months was that business wasn't just about having a great product. It was about solving a problem and making sure your customers knew that you were there to help them. Fast forward to 2021, and my little startup had grown into a profitable company. We had expanded our services to include more than just digital marketing, offering everything from website design to branding and copywriting. We had a team of 10 full-time employees, and I was no longer working from my tiny apartment. Instead, we had a small office in the city, and I had a clearer vision for the future. The challenges didn't stop there, though. Every day brought a new set of hurdles to overcome, whether it was dealing with difficult clients, managing a growing team, or navigating the complexities of business finances. But over time, I learned to embrace the chaos. I learned that growth is messy and that failure is an inevitable part of the process. There were days when I felt like throwing in the towel, but looking back, I know that every mistake, every setback, was an opportunity to learn and improve. One of the most unexpected parts of this journey has been how much I've learned about myself. I used to think I was risk-averse, but now I realize that taking calculated risks is part of what makes entrepreneurship so exciting. I've become more resilient, more adaptable, and more confident in my ability to tackle challenges head-on. Today, my company is thriving. We've helped hundreds of businesses grow and succeed, and our platform has expanded to new cities. I'm proud of what we've built, but I'm also aware that this is just the beginning. There are still so many opportunities to explore, and I'm constantly looking for ways to innovate and expand. Looking back at that moment in 2018 when I was sitting in my small apartment wondering if I had made a huge mistake, I realize how far I've come. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. If I could give one piece of advice to anyone thinking about taking the leap into entrepreneurship, it would be this: don't wait for the perfect moment. The perfect moment doesn't exist. Take the leap, even if you don't have everything figured out. Trust yourself and be willing to learn along the way. The road ahead will be tough, but if you stick with it, the rewards will be greater than you can imagine. Sometimes, all it takes is a single decision to change the course of your life. For me, that decision was quitting my job and betting on myself. It's been the hardest and most fulfilling journey of my life, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was 2017 when I first decided to leave my 9-to-5 job. I was a marketing executive at a mid-sized tech company in Silicon Valley, a job that paid well and came with decent benefits. But after 5 years of slogging away at the same desk, I started feeling like I was stuck in a never-ending loop of mundane tasks, endless meetings, and spreadsheets. The worst part? I wasn't even passionate about the industry anymore. It was just a job. And for someone who always dreamed of being his own boss, that realization was terrifying. So, I did what any person in my position would do. I started brainstorming business ideas. I was tired of the corporate grind and wanted to build something that I could pour my heart into. The problem was, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I wasn't an expert in anything, nor was I particularly skilled in one specific area. But there was one thing I did know for sure: I loved solving problems. I spent months trying to come up with an idea. I thought about starting a social media consulting business, an e-commerce site, even a podcast, but nothing seemed to stick. Then one day, while I was scrolling through my social media feeds, I saw a post about a local startup that was offering a service to help people reduce stress through guided meditation. It was a simple concept, but it struck me like a bolt of lightning. There were so many wellness apps out there, but none of them seemed to provide the full experience. A lot of them focused on meditation, but none offered real-time feedback, personalized sessions, or integration with physical wellness activities like yoga or breathing exercises. It felt like there was a gap in the market, and I thought maybe I could fill it. That's when the idea for Mindspace, a holistic wellness app that combined guided meditation, mindfulness, and real-time health data, was born. It wasn't an entirely new concept, but I knew that by integrating features like personalized meditation sessions, a community aspect, and fitness tracking, I could create something unique. I spent the next few weeks doing research. I was still working my full-time job at the time, so every evening and weekend was consumed by this new idea. I looked into the wellness industry, read books on mindfulness, studied other wellness apps, and even started taking online courses to learn more about app development and design. But here's the kicker: I had no background in tech. I was just a regular guy with a corporate job and a dream of building something that could help people. I had no idea how to code, and I wasn't familiar with any of the tools needed to build an app. I quickly realized that I couldn't do it alone. So, I started looking for partners who had the technical skills I lacked. I joined online startup communities, attended local meetups, and reached out to friends who might know someone in the tech industry. That's when I met Sarah, a brilliant software engineer who had worked for some big-name tech companies. She was passionate about wellness, and after a few coffee meetings, we decided to partner up and bring Mindspace to life. We spent the next few months working on the app, navigating the steep learning curve of the tech industry. I worked on branding, marketing, and user experience design, while Sarah focused on the technical side of things. Our first major challenge came when we started building the app prototype. We realized that developing a truly seamless, user-friendly experience was far harder than we had anticipated. Every time we thought we had a breakthrough, a new issue would arise, whether it was integrating health data from wearables or ensuring that the meditation algorithms worked well for every user. It felt like we were constantly hitting roadblocks. But we didn't give up. We kept refining the app, getting feedback from potential users, and making adjustments. By early 2018, we had a working prototype, and we were ready to pitch it to investors. This was another daunting challenge. Neither Sarah nor I had any experience raising capital, and we quickly learned that getting investors interested in an idea is no small feat. We attended countless pitch events, reached out to angel investors, and even tried crowdfunding on Kickstarter. But despite our enthusiasm and the positive feedback from users, no one seemed willing to take a chance on a wellness app from two first-time founders. After months of rejection, we had to pivot. We realized that the problem wasn't the idea, it was our approach. Investors wanted proof of concept, and we hadn't yet shown enough user traction. So, we decided to launch a beta version of the app and focus on building a small, loyal community of users. We invested our own savings to keep the project going and spent countless hours building our initial user base. By mid-2018, we had around 2,000 users, most of whom came from social media and word of mouth. We gathered feedback and used it to improve the app, constantly tweaking the features to make it more user-friendly and effective. Slowly but surely, the app started gaining traction. We weren't making money yet, but we were finally getting the attention of the right people. In 2019, after almost 2 years of hustle, we finally got our first major break. A well-known wellness influencer with millions of followers took notice of our app and shared it with her audience. The response was overwhelming. Downloads skyrocketed, and we began to see our first real revenue from subscriptions. That was the turning point. Investors started reaching out to us, wanting to know more about the app and our plans for scaling. Fast forward to 2020, and Mindspace had grown into a full-fledged business. We expanded our team, raised a seed round of funding, and began to make strategic partnerships with fitness brands and healthcare providers. What had started as a small idea in my head, born out of frustration with my corporate job, was now a thriving company with a mission to help people improve their mental and physical well-being. Looking back, the journey was anything but easy. There were so many moments when I wanted to give up, when we were struggling to get our first customers, or when we were facing investor rejection after investor rejection. But every step of the way, I reminded myself why I started, to build something meaningful. The road wasn't linear, but every setback taught me something important, and every small win kept me going. I'm proud of what we've accomplished with Mindspace, but I know that the journey is far from over. The wellness industry is constantly evolving, and so are we. I still remember the fear I felt when I first quit my job and took the leap into entrepreneurship. It was terrifying, but it was also the best decision I've ever made. If you're thinking about taking the leap, my advice is simple: just start. You'll figure it out along the way, and even if you don't succeed right away, the lessons you learn will be invaluable. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.